Hey y'all, it's Oscar Sunday, aka one of my favorite days of the year, and I am so glad that Above the Line episode 5 is gonna fall on Oscar Sunday so that we can have this kind of in the history of this channel, of this series. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today. I actually have a plethora of Oscar-related stories to discuss today, and maybe a little bit of a snappy one, because, I got some things to get done before I sit my butt down, make my actual predictions on my iPad, and watch the red carpet, which is probably one of my favorite things to do on Oscar Sunday. It's kind of get a feel, get a vibe for the event. I will admit off the bat, I've only seen 4 of the 10 Best Picture nominees. I have in years past tried really, really hard to try to see all of them. There's been years where I've gotten really close. I don't think there's ever been a year where I've seen every nominee before the Oscars. I can guarantee you there's never been one. However, this year I think there were just a lot of films that, if I'm being quite honest with this little film community, some of them I wasn't necessarily too keen to watch, so I'll be interested to see what wins tonight and if anything sort of piques my interest after the fact. But the 4 that I have seen, just so we're kind of on a clear basis as we go into today's episode of Above the Line, I've seen Elvis, which I was not I wasn't a huge fan of. My reviews on the channel. I saw Top Gun Maverick, which was probably one of my favorite movies of last year. That review is also available on the channel. I have seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think was good, but I don't know that I was as roaringly in its favor. I think the cast is adorable, and I love seeing all of them interact on the red carpet and kind of the things they say about each other, and seeing the main guy, whose name I can never pronounce, who's the kid from Indiana Jones, see him bring Brendan Fraser into their kind of group at, I think, the SAG Awards. So sweet, so wholesome. And then last night I saw Avatar: Way of the Water, which I also felt like was a fun time, a fun experience. But again, I don't know that I'd rewatch it other than to watch it in 3D, which I did see, and it was phenomenal. The visuals were phenomenal. I will give it that. But that's kind of our basis for today's little Oscar-themed episode. Please do share in the live chat what your plans for this Oscar Sunday are, if you're having a big party, if you're watching with friends and family, if you're kind of doing something by yourself, or if you literally don't care about the Oscars. I want to know about it. Tell me in the live chat, because my opinions over the years have swayed, but I just realized I like watching it, and it's an entertaining time for me. So let's hop in to let me say hello to everyone first. Alex was here so early before I changed the time. Oh, is my chat working? There we go. Alex says, "Hi Sasha, happy Oscar Sunday. I hope you're having a great Sunday. Just a heads up, next Sunday I don't think I'll be able to make it because I'll be busy with the family." Totally understand, Alex. No problem at all. There will always be the replay for you to watch later. And then Swirly Bird is here. Finally have time to watch live again. Thank you so much for being here, friend. I really appreciate it. Now, guys, let's get to our first story of the day, which is something that I've actually never put together before, or never really thought through the name of this until I started to read this article. And it's what's called the Oscar halo effect. So basically, when a movie is nominated for an Oscar or for a Best Picture, there's often an uptick in views, box office sales, if the film is still in theaters, or anything kind of the sort, that the film kind of gets additional benefits, potentially monetarily, or just in more people watching it because of gaining the notoriety of being in the Oscars. And this definitely makes sense to me, and I'd love to know how historically, how long does the halo effect last? Are there movies that really get a huge bump after the award ceremony? Especially, I'm kind of interested to now see the statistics in terms of if something was perceived as being snubbed, does it then get more views afterwards? But I think this is a really interesting way in which the Oscars does impact popular culture and public discourse. Obviously, it does both of those things. Whether the winner tonight is somebody that you believe is deserved of the award or the title of being Oscar winner, I just think it's very interesting that this is kind of an effect. So for the actual numbers, which is what you're here for, again, I do have all of my articles linked below correctly. I'm going to have to go through one of these days when I actually have time, maybe tonight during the ceremony, and fix all the other above the line. But going forward, all of the articles should be available in the description below for you to go read these stories yourself. And I highly encourage you to do that in case I misrepresented something or you would like to know more. Basically, this year, the biggest takeaway for the Oscars was there was a bigger halo effect push, more viewership after the nomination was announced at home than there was in theaters. And I think a large part of this is because a lot of these huge titles are finding streaming homes, if not the home of, they're finding streaming homes immediately after being taken out of theaters. So with that shrinking theatrical window that we've experienced, Top Gun Maverick and Avatar Way of the Water would tell you that that theatrical window doesn't apply. But almost immediately once these movies are out of theaters, we find them sometime on some type of streaming service. And so Top Gun Maverick is actually the most watched Best Picture nom after the nomination was announced, with 2.4 million views on Paramount Plus, which is where you can stream it. And this makes sense because this was the huge push for Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus got two big name kind of awards contenders, which I guess Babylon is kind of not really in the picture tonight, which really makes me sad. But Babylon and Top Gun Maverick are both on Paramount Plus, and anyone who was around last year watching this was like, when is Top Gun Maverick not going to be in theaters? Because it was for like months, like into September. I want to say I knew people who had gone to go see the movie. I myself saw it twice in theaters, my early screening, and then I saw it again, and I own it on DVD copy. So that also kind of goes into some of these like Halo nomination, kind of the effect of just, additional what do I want to say? Like, just additional sales, basically, after the fact. However, even though that's the most watched, Elvis is close behind it, close, relative, with 1.8 million on HBO Max, 1.8 million views on HBO Max after the nomination. And it's also winning in lifetime viewership amongst the nominees, Best Picture nominees, with nearly 9 million views, which is pretty crazy if that's just alone on streaming, that many people have gone to see it. And I do think it's interesting too, because I do think, as much as sometimes I feel like the films that are nominated for Best Picture are not always like the films that a lot of people kind of have their eyes and ears out looking for, like I think you can see with the titles we're talking about right now, these are ones that are maybe a little bit more mainstream rather than like Oscar baity, like some of the other titles. Again, not trying to use that as an insult, just saying that some of these appeal more to mass audiences. And I think that the interesting thing here is that people might be more inclined to watch an Oscar baity movie if it's available to them at home. Like, oh, they're not going to go in theaters to go watch this, but maybe they'll watch it at home. So I think that's very interesting. And then to kind of round out this picture of halo effects, which the article is stuffed with a ton of what the numbers were for box offices between all of these. So I highly recommend you go check this article out. But Everything Everywhere All at Once is the front runner in terms of nominations. It has the most nominations, and I believe I read an article this week, which I can't vouch for because I didn't credit it or cite it here, but it's one of the most awarded films or nominated films of all time. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere this week, between SAG and HPFA and the Academy and all that kind of stuff. We'll see tonight how it shakes out, but it's the leader with, I believe, like 11 nominations tonight. Yet it only has had about 1.1 million streaming or online viewings since the nomination, which I believe Everything Everywhere All at Once was available on either Showtime. I think I read in the article that it was available through the Showtime add-on to either Amazon Prime or Hulu potentially. And I think it might have been available on HBO Max. Someone can check me on that. But I just thought this was kind of an interesting, I've never really thought about this in terms of actual numbers and actual views, and then how streaming is allowing these movies to have a little bit more longevity, because otherwise the halo effect probably would have been like for a film that came out in late December or January, extending it slightly through March, which is, kind of hard for some of these films unless people do want the opportunity to go see them again in theaters. But I think streaming makes it a little bit more accessible to people and gets an ability for more people to kind of form their opinion on all of the Best Picture nominees because they get to see them more. And I think what's also reflected here is that I don't believe a lot of the others are available on streaming platforms. Again, the article may go further into this. I was kind of just looking for the top line here, but yeah, it's just something to think about. But now to your comments. What do you think about this halo effect of the Oscars? Do you think it really has a big bearing on stuff? Let's see. Alex said the only Best Picture nominees I saw are Avatar 2, Elvis, Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fabelmans, Top Gun, Maverick, and Tar. So there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You only not seen 3, Alex, which I believe are Woman Talking, Triangle of Sadness, and On the Western Front. Oh, On the Western Front is available on Netflix. So, but that one is a foreign film. So, again, in terms of foreign language, I believe it's in German. So that could be a barrier for people to watch it as well. Ashu says, I'll be watching it alone. I really enjoyed Elvis and hope it wins Best Picture and Actor. I really hope Baz wins Best Director. I hope that you are happy with whatever the outcome is. I was not the biggest fan of Elvis, so I would not have the same hopes and dreams for it personally, but it does seem to really be a crowd pleaser, and with how many people have actually seen it, even just post its nomination, and I know how popular it was beforehand, I think it just wasn't for me. But I'm rooting for you to have a great night, friend, and for your films to do well. Alex says, I really think I preferred Babylon to take the spot instead of Elvis. I would agree, but I don't think it's even a fair comparison because even I, as much as I loved Babylon, it was my favorite movie of last year, even I can admit that the marketing and decision to release that movie when it was released is quite truly one of its biggest downfalls. I think the film itself is great, and I'd love to know what kind of numbers it does on Paramount Plus. And I do believe there's a good portion of people who saw it who really did love it. But if you are releasing a film with a 3-hour runtime that is rated R and not just a soft R, but like a no child should see this movie, and you release it Christmas weekend, I think that's really bad. And this brings in an interesting conversation about trailers and stuff. Like, obviously, there's red band trailers for a reason because you can't be promoting a movie with a bunch of promiscuity and profanity in it just on just regular network and cable television just throughout the day. You can't do that. However, when you do have to censor a trailer like that for appropriate reasons, you don't reflect the film's true nature. And I think that's also something that could have been misleading to people who potentially went and saw that movie, not knowing what to expect. And I also knew, like, I had family members who were considering seeing that movie the week between Christmas and New Year's, and then watched the trailer and were like, you know what? I'd rather not. So I really do think that one is just, as much as it saddens me, I don't think Babylon was necessarily in this race in the popular contest. However, that is what's interesting is, like, I don't know why Hollywood seems to have shunned it as much. Maybe it's because it's slightly a critique of Hollywood. I don't know. We don't need to extrapolate on that. We can move forward. Ashu also enjoyed Babylon. I did find it somewhat unfocused. I definitely think that's a fair point, and I think it's definitely a very self-indulgent movie, if you know what I mean. It definitely does it need the runtime? Not necessarily. It's really kind of, to me, it's kind of like Avatar: Way of the Water, which I saw last night, which was also 3 hours and also did come out at Christmas. But that's like a family could go see that movie. There's nothing wrong with the family going and seeing that unless, you know, depending on your child's or your comfortability with your, I don't think that's a word, with your child seeing violence, but it's not in the same type of way as other movies. What am I trying to say here? Basically, I definitely can see your criticism of it being unfocused. It's very long, and I do think that's, you're kind of there for the experience of it, but if you can't even get to it, then what's the point? And I genuinely don't believe that it's a film that a lot of people outside of real film buffs would really appreciate in the same way. They might just be like, well, why is it this? Why is it the way that it is? Spielberg said to Tom Cruise that he saved the Hollywood industry. I think Tom Cruise and his team were very smart handling this movie during the pandemic and releasing it last year in theaters. I think I do have to say, as disappointing as it was at the time to keep seeing, because at the time it was several Tom Cruise movies. It was the Mission Impossible films, and it was this film getting moved back and pushed back again and again. And I think this was the best move possible for this film, because I don't think it would have had the same success when people were not comfortable going to the theaters. I think it was best saved for a year where people are going to come en masse to see a film. It's also the kind of film that I think needs to be seen with a ton of people, like in a theater, have that theater experience. And I think it's fantastic. And yes, I agree wholeheartedly, Alex. The Little Mermaid is probably going to have an official trailer during the Oscars. I would definitely agree with you there. The Oscars, if you don't know, is on ABC, which is owned by who, everyone? Disney. So, and that's why Jimmy Kimmel is hosting rather than probably Jimmy Fallon, because he's an ABC late night host. I'm interested to see how that goes. How many guesses are we going for with how many times the slap is going to be mentioned? Because I can't even hold myself back. Like, one of our stories today is about the slap. But it's going to be mentioned like 20 times before the Oscars even technically starts, I'm sure. Like, there's no avoiding it. There's no... As much as I wish we could kind of just move on at this point, we can't. And especially because Chris Rock's stand-up special just came out where he talks about it. So, there you go. Everything Everywhere All at Once is the most awarded film in history, which beats its previous predecessor, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. There you go. So there you go. Thank you, Alex, for that rundown. Joey, thank you. It's not on HBO Max. I don't know why I thought it was for a period of time. Maybe it's available. That doesn't make sense. I'll just Google where to find it if you haven't seen it yet and want to before tonight. Ashu says, I definitely agree or believe in the halo effect. Most people I know who saw Maverick saw it around September. Definitely, but that wouldn't necessarily fall under the Oscars halo effect. That would just kind of be like good word of mouth, because the Oscar nominations, although I guess it would fall under the Oscars buzz, but Oscars nominations didn't come out until, I believe, last month. Philosopher's King, the elephant scene was a lot, but if that was the worst part of Babylon, I don't think that would have been the thing that people bringing their kids would have been concerned about. I think there was a lot of other stuff that would have been way more potentially disconcerting for parents to have their children see. I think All Quiet on the Western Front is going to win the best film. You think it's going to win Best Picture? I'll be interested. Usually, again, not to stay on this one subject for too long, but usually the film that actually ends up winning Best Picture is not like the one that gets the most number one votes, but it usually ends up being like whatever the most amount of people put as like their second or third choice, which is where I feel like a film like I feel like that's where a film like Elvis could sneak through and get it. Maybe All Quiet on the Western Front can do that as well, but I just don't know. I have a good feeling about Banshees of Inisherin doing well, but I just don't feel truly confident. I feel like the obvious choice is to say that Everything Everywhere All at Once is going to win, but I just don't know, because I don't know if, like, it's kind of on a hype train right now, but again, like, how much is that hype train the same in public discourse as it is in Hollywood? But that's that for this story. Moving on to our next story, which is, of course, a story about the slap. I promised it, and now I will deliver. I will say, I still to this day am very, very proud of the video I made recapping the Oscars last year for you all. And yeah, so I would highly recommend you go watch that if you want a little bit of a giggle and a little bit of a last season on the Oscars recap before tonight. But so this story was kind of an interesting, again, it's really not that big of a development. I don't want to hype it up too much. Basically, as we all know, Will Smith, after he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars last year, he won the Academy Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role. He won this for King Richard, in which he played Richard Williams, Serena and Venus Williams' father, their tennis coach, and he did an incredible job in the movie. Let's separate the performance from the man a little bit, and he did a phenomenal job. That probably was one of the best performances of his life, other than potentially him slapping Chris Rock, because that's what's unfortunately is remembered about the situation. But despite the fact that the kind of slap on the wrist, if you'll allow, that Will Smith got after slapping Chris Rock live on global television, was that he is going to be banned from the Oscars and from all Academy-related events for the next decade, for 10 years. So, what would that be? 2033? He'll be back. 2033. But until then, he still did get the Oscar last year. And usually, a winner of an Oscar will go to the governor's ball, which is kind of the Oscars after party, and they will go, and there's like a stand there, almost like a bar, and they all bring their Oscars up, plop it down, and then they get the little thing at the bottom of the Oscar engraved with like their name and what they won for in the year and blah, blah, blah. So that they can kind of be remembered in their home, because it's obviously not personalized when they are given the award, because we don't know. They have all those accountants with their safety briefcases, and they sure as heck aren't going to let anybody know who won. And so recently, after making a TikTok video where he sort of complained that his Oscar is not engraved, or I don't know if he really complained about it or if it just came out, but apparently the request has been made to the Academy for him to be able to get his award engraved, and the president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Janet Yang, has said she's cool with him getting it engraved. Like, why not? Sure. She said specifically that he earned his award, and that they're willing to arrange that engraving for him, because I don't think they can just kind of have anybody do it. I don't know. I'm sure the Oscars has a whole committee related to just the engraving process and who actually does it. So is this really that interesting of an entertainment story? Not really, but it was something that I feel like it's let the man have his Oscar, let him have the thing, because he didn't last year. Of course, I didn't really follow through with that line of thought, but Will Smith, of course, did not attend the governor's ball last year to get his Oscar engraved, because he was sort of they said he was escorted, and then people were like, no, he wasn't escorted, but he left, and anyway, but he wasn't there. He didn't go last year, because that was post the incident on the screen here. So anyways, that's just a little thing. I just figured, since they're going to talk about it tonight, this is a new development in the Slapgate story. It's funny when you Google Will Smith slaps Chris Rock Oscars, there's a whole Wikipedia or Google page, event, or not event, but listing it as a historical event. If you were to type in Pearl Harbor, it would say the date and the year and a little blurb about what happened and people involved that you can hyperlink to. But this is treated in much the same way, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so there you go. There's your Will Smith Slapgate follow-up story. Yeah, I still think the right move, and I'm sure they actually probably tried this now that I think about it, was to get Chris Rock to host the Oscars this year. Why that was not, I guess he technically hosted last year. No, did he? Hold on, now I'm losing the plot. Chris Rock host Oscars 2022? I can't remember now. Was he? Oh, he said last year that he was asked to host the next Oscars. Okay, so I lied. Or I didn't lie, but that was obviously the turn of events, because let's all remember that this is in fact live TV, and as much as they need to punish Will Smith and keep him away from the Oscars so that this is not allowed going forward. I do think they need live television, and this is probably the best that their ratings have done, or people have talked about the Oscars, and people sure as heck are going to tune in this year, I think, to kind of see the follow-up to this, even though it's not really, I doubt either of them is going to be there. Well, I know Will Smith's not going to be. Anyways, moving on to y'all's thoughts on this. I remember the Will Smith slap very well. I was doing a watch party with a friend, and I was so confused. It went viral for a 2-week period with a lot of memes. Yes, absolutely. It was literally anything anybody could talk about the next day, I feel like. Nick says, checking in before I get on the road. Nick, 4 hours until you get home, but I must make it in time to watch The Last of Us so we can talk about it tomorrow. Yes, Nick, watch it. That's another thing, which I don't actually have in my story this week, but The Last of Us finale is going to air alongside the Oscars tonight. There will be a lot of stress in my household as to when we're going to watch the Oscars, and when we're going to watch The Last of Us, because the finale is tonight. The Oscars begins at 8, so you can watch a red carpet, you can watch the opening monologue, and about an hour of the ceremony before The Last of Us premieres. And then I'm sure someone in your house, and definitely in mine, is going to be like, let's switch it over, because no one wants that spoiled for them, probably more than they want to avoid Oscar spoilers. because that's just the world we live in, which I don't think is a bad thing, honestly, when this show has been the absolute, what is the word? Love of my television watching last 2 months. I just have loved it so much, and I'm so excited to see the way the season ends, but I'm actually very sad that it's going to be going away after that. Will Smith is also going to be shadow banned from getting a nomination for at least a decade, too. Voters are going to hold that slap against him basically forever. I think as we get closer to the end of the 10 years, I could see around like year 7 or 8 if he did something that's really phenomenal. But here's the thing. The Oscars tends to have a history of working quite differently than does like the Emmys. The Emmys likes to re-award the same shows, talent, and people year in and year out. And if they don't, it's kind of a sign that a show is really going downhill, and that it's not really getting as much love as it should be. They really kind of are consistent with like specifically the best drama category. If you look up the Emmys history of that, it's like kind of the same shows for like 3 or 4 years each, and then it shifts. So you can tell either something went off the air or it kind of fell off or whatever, or it didn't air one year or something like that. But with the Oscars, it kind of feels like they're almost trying to give everybody their due. And I think with the Oscars, even more so than other award shows, I'm not always as like feeling like, oh, this is the person that should have won. Last year, I definitely think Will Smith should have won, but I feel like I agree with you, Philosopher King, in the sense that now that he's got one, there's not as much need to like nominate him again. Had he not won last year, I think you still would have been correct in the shadow banning, but in a couple years, people still would have been like, okay, but he was a good actor. He's a really good actor. But yeah, it definitely does not matter like what he does for at least I would say the next 5 years. After that, I could see people letting it go a little bit more. He could run a good PR kind of campaign for himself there and like revamp his image a little bit. But on the other hand, Pavan says, I think what Will Smith did was unforgivable, at least for now, but his apology video felt real. I never watched his apology video. I think at the end of the day, like, people make mistakes, but that feels like more than just a mistake. And from my opinion, because it's like, dude, you know you're on live television and you know you could have handled the situation differently. And there was a lot of, I still believe to this day, had he not done anything, and if the next day him and Jada had kind of come out and been like, hey, this was really upsetting to us and this was really kind of rude, and talked more about alopecia and all that kind of stuff, I think it would have been a different situation. But now I think everyone kind of wants to be on the, Will Smith kind of sucks bandwagon. And it's unfortunate because he is very talented and I think he's a personality that was really well beloved, but I think now he's kind of, the tide has turned against him. And it's going to take a lot for public opinion to swing back in his favor, at least as fully as it was before. We'll put it that way. Alex says, what I'll do to watch both Oscars and Last of Us is that if I leave the tea for the Oscars in the background while I watch Last of Us, I'll give my headphones and watch the episode on my phone. Nice. I like that plan, Alex. I really think HBO didn't debut the episode early because they did it with the Super Bowl and it's probably a lot of money to debut it early. I agree, and I think for a finale that's different than just like another episode. Also, the Super Bowl, let's be honest, the Super Bowl is a way bigger draw than the Oscars. Even if the Oscars is the Super Bowl for movies, it's not the same as the Super Bowl. Like, people who don't watch football go to Super Bowl parties and don't watch things other than the Super Bowl. People who even like the Oscars don't watch it. So I think I think it's just a different situation, and I'm not surprised. I hoped for myself and all of you guys who would want to watch both that it would be a different situation, but it doesn't surprise me at all. They kind of made the one exception, and they're really on a roll. I believe last week they broke another record in terms of viewership, so yeah. I think it's the smart decision. Yeah, okay. Cool. Let's move on to our next story, which I think is a quick one. Yeah, it's that I watched Beetlejuice for the first time this week, and turns out there's a Beetlejuice 2 in the works. Apparently this sequel has been going around for years, kind of in development hell, if you will, trying to be worked out, trying to get different cast members on board. But the rumor, and this is a very rumored story, the article I read was very clear about the fact that this is like not definite, but for there to even be a story about it, I feel like somebody has to know something. But it wasn't even like, oh, a source has told us, blah, blah, blah. It just sort of seemed like this might be like word on the street, public thought, or like kind of like town gossip in Hollywood. But Jenna Ortega is supposedly, allegedly, potentially, reportedly going to be involved in some way in the Beetlejuice 2, in the sequel. The film is being worked on for Warner Brothers, and right now, reportedly, both Tim Burton and Michael Keaton are back on, which, to be honest, if you had neither of them, like, what's the point in even making a sequel? Like, Beetlejuice is just, like, a really fun, campy movie that's funny to watch other times of the year, but would really hit really hard around Halloween. And I think Jenna Ortega, especially coming off kind of her horror kick right now, in her previous relationship, of course, in Wednesday with Tim Burton, I think that'd be super interesting to see her continue that kind of creative partnership and create kind of like a little niche for herself. The only thing is she's so talented that I would just hope that horror isn't the only thing she does, because she's so young in terms of like her career having a lot of potential. However, the interesting news, which I think fits just so well and would allow her to kind of have like this really great, again, like, it's a really smart career move at this point, I think, is that she would reportedly be playing Lydia's daughter, who Lydia in the original Beetlejuice is played by a young Winona Ryder. And if that's not perfect, and I feel like this haircut in particular that she has right here, that she's kind of rocking right now, is very Winona Ryder-esque. So I'm really, at least like 2023 Winona Ryder, so I'm really loving that. The other thing that I just thought was interesting with the story is kind of the way that people, stars in particular, when they make these smart career choices and then they really just pick up a little bit of momentum, how they can kind of take over the world. I think we've seen this a little bit with Pedro Pascal, and the way that like people who have been watching The Mandalorian have known who Pedro Pascal is. People who watch Narcos, who like Pedro Pascal has not been like not around for a while, right? Like he has one of the most gruesome, if not the most gruesome deaths in Game of Thrones, period. Okay. So he's been around. He's been a working actor for a long time. However, he makes one right move with The Last of Us, and all of that good fortune over the years, all of his work ethic and all of the things he's been a part of has now blown him out of the water into this level of celebrity that I just don't even think is fathomable. And like it's just wild to me how he's gone from being like, oh, like a couple people online are like really big Pedro Pascal fans, to like this man has taken over the world. Like now his coffee order at Starbucks is a point of contention online. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a different level of celebrity than just like, oh, everybody loves him in The Mandalorian and he's talented. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like Jenna Ortega, I might, and maybe it's just because there's some similarities there, might be the same. So she was obviously kind of a Disney kid. She was on Stuck in the Middle, I believe was the TV show she was on. She was also young Jane in Jane the Virgin, and she's been in plenty of other things. Scream released last year, and then she was in X, which also came out later last year. Now she's in Scream 6, which just released this weekend. She's, of course, starred in Wednesday. And then last night she was on SNL, which is kind of the kicking point for both, like, I feel like Pedro Pascal going from being like, oh, people like him, to like, no, he's taken over. And I feel like Jenna Ortega is on a similar path, although it feels a little bit more like, I don't want to say pigeonholed because that sounds really like condescending, but it feels a little bit more pointed in the horror direction. And so I feel like that's where something like Beetlejuice could be kind of like a really smart cap to this horror side of her career, unless that's something that she really wants to go down forever in the future, which again is super, super interesting. But, oh, and of course You, which again fits in that sort of same like serial killer horror vibe. So anyways, I don't know. I'm a big fan of her. I'll watch probably anything she does, and I'm so excited to see her go forward. And if Beetlejuice 2 does happen, it'd be really interesting to see her be a part of it, and I think this is the perfect role to cast her in. All right, now to your thoughts on the matter. It's crazy how each year has a trend with a new A-lister that rules the world. 2020 was Anya Taylor-Joy for Queen's Gambit. 2021 was Florence Pugh. 2022 is Jenna Ortega. I think that's like a really great way to put it, Alex. Like a new A-lister. And I think it fits to kind of the way that people view celebrity now. We want to pick celebrities who are talented, who we feel are maybe unique or fresh and new, but have not just like sprung up overnight. Because I think overnight success is one, I truly believe that overnight success is kind of an idiotic thing to say, because obviously if you're like, unless it's literally the first thing you're ever cast in and you're amazing and then that launches the rest of your career, I think that very rarely happens with people. And I think overnight success is a lot more like nobody really pays attention until the overnight success happens, and then you realize that like that was only possible because of the years prior of success. So like I totally agree with this. And I think what's super cool is we're also not living in a day and age where it feels like people have 15 minutes of fame, but it's like Florence Pugh and Anya Taylor-Joy have been in so many things and are just fan favorite actresses, even though their kind of era of being like the top person has gone on. And I think it's something that like it feels like then when you see someone be successful in an earlier part of their career or kind of are around for that launching point, then you kind of want to see them succeed because you feel like parasocially you kind of have like an investment in their success, if you will. Or like I know with like Pedro Pascal, having watched having watched Game of Thrones and Mandalorian years prior to The Last of Us, now it feels like this is so exciting that like everybody loves this actor now. So I think it's just kind of fun. Eric watched 65 yesterday. I enjoyed it. I would like to really see this. Next week, Scream. I thought Scream already came out because this next story about it would imply that it's already out. So I think it's already out. But I don't know if maybe you're saying you're going to go see Scream 6 next week. You want to see Jenna Ortega in a Wes Anderson movie. I think she'd be great. I agree. I think that'd be like a really cool fit. I would love to see her in that. And yes, Alex, Pedro was also in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was in he's been in various different like procedural cop or law drama procedurals. And so, yeah, it's definitely interesting. Francis says she seems to be part of the herd of actors that gets popularized for a brief period and then die out after a year or two. They just start to blend into the mainstream media and less stick out. I feel like, I don't know, it just depends like what people you're into. Like I think if you're into all the movies and things that say like Florence Pugh is doing or Jenna Ortega or all the stuff that Pedro Pascal chooses to do, I think it's just like, are you watching things simply because there's going to be a point where like a new crop of younger talent is going to pop up out of nowhere and kind of take over. Obviously, that's just kind of the way that Hollywood works. But I think the interesting thing is where are these people who are much younger in their 20s going to be in 40 years? Like, will they have died out, or will it be like a Meryl Streep type story where it's like your entire career you've been, you know, once people have kind of been, the light bulb has turned on to see your talent, will they continue to succeed? I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch. Okay. All right. Last story of the day is our box office. And we have, I couldn't come up with like a clever title that would fit on my little PowerPoint presentation. And I have not seen the film. So spoilers, please keep them to yourself because I would really not like that to be spoiled for me or anyone else in the chat who has not yet seen Scream 6. However, Scream has set a franchise record, much like Creed 3 last week, being the franchise record breaker for box office with 44 million in the US this weekend, which is pretty great. The fact that it beat last year's Scream 5, which I felt like was a pretty big deal. Again, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't tell you if it's like, oh, the brutal kills or like the word of mouth, but I feel like it's just people love a good slasher. And when you've kind of revamped it last year and made it something different about it, people are always just going to be on board for this type of thing, I think. And to kind of back that up again with what we were just talking about with Jenna Ortega, Jenna Ortega was just on SNL last night. So, of course, she's been in the public eye this whole week in terms of like doing SNL promos, and of course still talking about Wednesday, and she's going to be an Oscars presenter, and she presented at the SAG Awards, and but her star power is truly on full display, and I'm not saying that's the only reason that this film has done well, but her being in it obviously is like doing something, I think. In other news for the box office this week, because I don't know that there's like as much of a story for me to tell you since I have not yet seen this movie, Creed 3 made another $27 million in its second weekend, so this past weekend, totaling a total of $101 million domestically. I saw Creed 3 last Sunday evening after Above the Line, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm just such a fan of the Rocky franchise, and kind of I just like the feeling of this movie being like it's a boxing movie, but it's not really about boxing, but then again it is about boxing, and I think Michael B. Jordan did a fantastic job with his directorial debut there. So that's kind of my thoughts on the box office for this weekend. Let's get to y'all's thoughts, and then I guess this is going to be a relatively short episode. Everyone can kind of go off and get ready for their Oscar plans for this evening after this. Philosopher King saw... I turned off the chat, sorry. Saw Scream 6, and it is amazing. Lots of fun reactions from my audience. It was my favorite of the franchise other than the first Scream. That's super exciting to hear because I've seen Scream 1, 2, and 5. So I haven't seen the others, and I feel like part of the reason I didn't go see this weekend is because I hadn't seen the one with Hayden Panettiere, which I don't know. One, that's definitely not how you say her last name, I don't think. And two, I don't know if I need to watch. I don't know. The Scream movies, obviously you know that there's Ghostface and you know that he's trying to kill people, and so that's kind of like what you need to know. But I feel like I appreciated the Scream 5 so much more because I had seen Scream 1, and so now I'm feeling like now we're kind of back in the, like, there's so many Screams, so it's probably worth seeing them all. Swirliest Bird said, I honestly was never a massive Scream fan, but Scream 6 was awesome. I'm glad for its success and hope the next ones are great too. That's super exciting. I was just really happy when I saw Scream 5 last year because, one, I just love the entire concept of the Scream films. The fact that they, like, poke fun at horror films in general, poke fun at film form in general, but they're still, like, genuinely terrifying. And I think what was super exciting about Scream 5 and the future of the Scream franchise after Scream 5 was as successful as it was, is that the directors, and I can't remember their names, they did Ready or Not too, I believe, but they're, like, huge Wes Craven fans. And so there's something I really appreciate about people who are able to take on a franchise and make it as good, if not better, than the original kind of thing, and continue that legacy because they're such genuine fans of it. Like, there's sometimes where that's a little bit of a danger that, like, will they stick too close to the source material and not, like, make it their own thing? But there's also, like, the upside to it, which is, like, they care about it more than almost anybody else. So, like, they want to make it good. Alex says, Scream 6 is probably my favorite Scream sequel. It's so good. I wonder how it will compete with Shazam 2, John Wick 4, and Dungeons & Dragons. Yes, all of those are coming out very soon. The end of March, these next 2 weeks of March are going to be quite wild in terms of releases. I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but with Shazam 2, I feel like I've already seen it because I've seen the trailer like 3 times now. Never once have I chosen to because everybody told me it gives away, like, the whole movie. It feels like the whole movie is in the trailer. But since I've been to the theaters a couple of times recently with trailers going on, I've seen them. And I don't, again, you guys know I'm not a DC fan. We don't need to, like, rehash this every time. But I just don't, like, they haven't done anything to, like, get me there. They haven't done anything to, like, make me want to go see it. I guess, other than using Eminem in the trailer, which is fun. But I am excited for Dungeons & Dragons, and I am excited for John Wick 4, although I think I've only seen John Wick and John Wick 2, so I need to watch 3 before 4. I'm way more excited about the Ballerina spinoff with Ana de Armas, to be quite honest, but I like a good Keanu Reeves movie, and it looks like it's going to be a fun time. I'm definitely planning to go see Scream 6. I promise you guys, like, I'm a big Scream fan. Last night, the option was to go watch Scream 6, which I had My fiance Christian had not seen Scream 5, and I felt like that was at least important to see before Scream 6, especially with Jenna Ortega's character, her sister's character, all of those kind of the newly introduced characters rather than just Sydney and Gail and all that kind of stuff. So we didn't go see it. We saw Out Her Way of the Water instead. But trust me, it's on the top priority for me to go see very, very soon, if not sometime early this week. And if so, I am probably, again, I keep giving myself too many options of times to do things, but I really do, for some of these movies that I'm not able to see early and review on the channel, I do kind of want to get back into doing written reviews on my website, Assembled Press, for you all, just because I feel like sometimes doing a video review feels a little stale. In fact, my my Ant-Man video, look for that, because if I have time today during the Oscars or after or tonight, I'm just gonna put it up, and literally anytime I finish it, it's just gonna be published, because I just need to get it off my plate. It's hanging over me, and I don't know why. I haven't published it. The sound is horrible in it. I'll give you that heads up. Unfortunately, it is, but it's at a point where I just kind of need to force myself to make it before I go and do other videos that I want to do. I haven't seen Scream 6 either, but it's really good to see mid-budget films succeed again. Between this and Banshees of Inisherin, I'm happy to see non-franchise or smaller franchise flourish. Yes, that's very exciting. Francis says, I believe that the time of long-term careers has really come to pass, especially for the younger generation of actors. Lawrence is a great example of how her career is in the current Hollywood. Yes, but I do feel like, so Jennifer Lawrence just recently this week left CAA, which was the agency that she was represented by, and is changing. And then there was also a trailer for a couple new, or I don't think she left CAA this week. I think she's previously left CAA, and now her agency and management team is kind of doing different films. I think that Jennifer Lawrence could have a renaissance. Like, I don't think we're beyond that point. And people still want her to do things. I think it's just, I agree with you that not everyone is guaranteed to have that type of success. Scream 6 is some spoilers for Scream 4. I don't know that I'm as concerned about the spoilers as I am just like, I just want to understand who everyone is. And I want the fanfare to hit as hard as possible. So I think I might just take my time to watch the next couple, but also I really just want to see it, you know? They keep you updated for what you need. Okay, thank you, Spoilerbird. The meta commentary of the Scream films is one of the best parts. Scream 6 has some fun meta jokes too. I'm so excited because I think Scream 5 did a fantastic job of bringing that same meta commentary and like level of satire to the current realm of films and requels. And again, Fernando, I've never seen Halloween or any of the sequels, which is a crime, probably, in many of your eyes, but I apologize. I have currently received, and maybe making a video on, a list of movies that have been recommended to me by people who are have a much larger repertoire of film, and I am slowly working my way through it. This week, Scott Pilgrim and Beetlejuice were my introductions to that. Next up is probably gonna be Almost Famous. Halloween, I may just wait a little bit longer on, but I do still think I'd be a Scream girl over Halloween. And guys, with that, I am gonna let you all go watch the Oscars. Have a wonderful night, everyone. I hope all of your films win, even though saying that somebody's not gonna be happy. But next week we can kind of recap the Oscars if I don't do a dedicated video about it. As always, all of my links to all the other places you can follow me, and my website, Assembled Press, which I'm really trying to bring that back and do more with, and kind of separate my interest in terms of videos can be about some more fun, creative ideas that I have, and like my actual views, I can still give them to you and get my thoughts out onto paper, or I guess onto a keyboard. Thank you guys again for watching Above the Line this week. I will see you very soon, hopefully with more content. I know yet another week has gone by with no like dedicated videos, and I really want to thank you guys for your patience, because I have just, the motivation and the discipline I have not had recently to try to get stuff out to you all, but it makes me very sad because I love doing this weekly show, and there is nothing I love more than like looking back on a couple weeks worth of videos and being like, oh, I loved this one, I could do this one better next time and whatever. And I miss kind of interacting with you guys in the comments. So thank you for your continued patience with this. Also, I think I announced it last week, but if you want to join the Cinephiles Reading Book Club, I am going to be working on a Discord kind of for my entire channel and for the book club. So that is another side project I need to be working on. But you can go, there's a link down below to my Instagram. You can either DM me on Instagram that you want to join, and I have like it's really just a group chat with me, Alex, and a couple other people just talking about books. But I have a book clubs link, which I'll probably add below, so you can join that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. As always, have a wonderful Sunday, and I will see you next week with another episode of Above the Line. We'll keep it at 3 p.m. because this seems to be working for me. Bye, y'all.